Alright guys, welcome to a special episode where we take a look at the two films that absolutely ruined the Halloween franchise. Oh hey.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Actually, I'm recording a review.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'm going to be bashing the two Rob Zombie Halloweens.
Wait, I thought you loved those movies.
What? No, I don't. They ruined the franchise.
I'm fairly certain I remember you telling me you love those movies.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did.
No, I didn't.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did. No, wait. No, I fucking hate these movies. The Halloween franchise was going really well until this hack came along and ruined the Welcome everybody to a very special edition. Today I'm actually going to be talking with a guest of mine, President CM, who, if you're not familiar with this channel, you should go totally check it out, especially if you're a Halloween fan, which is convenient because we're going to be talking about some Halloween movies. Now, Connor, why don't you go ahead and just sort of introduce yourself, give us an idea of what you like, what your channel's like.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you who don't know, my name is Connor, aka President CM. Great introduction by Gabe here. And yeah, I basically just I like to talk about horror films. I like to talk about movies in general, but my channel is strictly horror at the moment. And I do have some outside stuff. I have a guy who makes content on my channel named Not Craig. He's a great guy, makes some great stuff. But definitely head over to the channel, check out. I mean, I hope you guys like it. And if anybody's watching this directed from my channel or from my life, definitely check out this channel. It's awesome. I would not be here if it wasn't. I mean, the president deserves the best. So definitely stay here, check out this channel. That's all I got to say, really.
Well, the thing about the president, we have to keep current times in mind when you say that. But moving on. Thank you. And to anybody who wants to check out Connor's channel, I'll be posting a link, obviously, down below. But today, we are going to be talking about two of the most controversial, polarizing, and outright hated horror movies that I can think of. And that being Rob Zombie's two Halloween movies. So, Connor, you're a big fan of this franchise, I know. And why don't you just give us an idea of what your history with these two movies are?
Well, really, I didn't see them when they came out. I remember vividly seeing the trailer, especially for Halloween 2. Just in my head, I remember it perfectly, seeing it on TV and stuff. But yeah, I picked it up from a store. I watched it with my girlfriend, the first one, and we loved it. And I felt like, there are things that they did that, we're going to get to. We're going to get to the ins and outs of it. But yeah, I watched it and I liked it, and watched Halloween 2 and absolutely hated it. But as time went on, I was able to turn that around and, turn that into one of the deepest loves I have in the franchise. And that's saying something, as how big of a fan I am of it. So definitely a weird history, but one that's present, and one that is a good relationship between President CM and the Rob Zombie Halloween films.
Yeah, I feel like that experience of like hating it at first and then coming around to loving it. I feel like these two movies, like, your opinion's going to change over time. You're really going to look at these movies differently now than when you did when you first saw them in theaters. And, I can imagine somebody who might even have loved them and now maybe don't like them so much or hate them. But that's how odd they are in the context of this franchise. Like, if you're a Halloween fan going in, like, buckle up, because Rob Zombie did some interesting things with this franchise,
to say the least.
Yeah, but why do you think they're still so controversial? What exactly, like, has people still talking about them, like, debating about them so heatedly all these years later?
I think it's exactly what you said. It's people people seem to think that fandom is getting themselves into this like security with the movie. When people were Halloween fans for so long, and the character was treated a certain way for so long,
Mhm.
and there were some outliers, particularly when they did H20 and Resurrection. Those were very
Mhm.
different takes on the character, but it was still along the same lines. Nothing too crazy. Nothing went totally out there. You could still get with what they did with the character. And it be true to the original. But when you reimagine a movie like this, people tend to get a little bit defensive. It's not as good as the original. Why did they do that? Michael's not like that in the original.
Mhm.
I just think people fail to realize nowadays, especially, that it's not supposed to be the same movie. There
No.
are things that are supposed to be similar. There are callbacks, and obviously the second half of the first movie that Rob did was a pretty much, it was very very close to what they did in the original, but I think it's just people weren't ready for the differences that they were going to do, that Rob brought to the table, and uh, honestly, I think that's what led to a lot of people hating it right off the bat. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, because Rob didn't just he didn't just like take Halloween, add some kind of stuff, but you know he didn't do what most remakes would do. What he did was he uprooted the entire thing. They said, "This is my movie, like it or not. This is my movie." And for a guy whose style is so off-putting and so abrasive intentionally, obviously you're gonna have people who are coming in who just want to see a Halloween movie, and they have to deal with all this white trash dialogue and all this gratuitous violence. That's not what they signed up for. Now, the same reason that people hate these films are the reason I love them. The fact that he was so bold in how he reimagined Halloween, and obviously the risk he took mostly paid off for me. So if they didn't, I wouldn't be saying that here. But even the fact that he was so bold in what he did, like you have to have respect for that because he took a lot of flack. He's still taking flack. It's obviously really impacted his career moving forward. Like these two films, like horror fans are really divided on now in a way they weren't before. But I really don't think he cared. He just wanted to make the version of Halloween that he wanted to make, and that's respectable, in my
I
opinion.
agree.
Yeah. But that aside, we're going to get into these two movies. We're going to get into the nitty gritty, talk about what works, what doesn't, and just the legacy that these movies are going to have now that they're going back and making a new timeline. Will this be like discarded and forgotten, or will maybe it gain its own cult following for years to come? So obviously, we're going to start with the first one, Rob Zombie's Halloween, released in 2007. When did you first see this movie?
Um, I want to say I want to say it wasn't until like I want to say 2014, about 4 years ago. It just I knew it was there. I knew it was a remake. I think we had discussed this at some point between us, but I knew Rob Zombie's music growing up. I listened to it as a kid, but I never really knew he went into movies. I wasn't allowed to watch horror as a kid, so when I got to that point of like I can watch horror movies now, I can watch whatever I want, and here's Halloween. I've seen the original, haven't seen the remake. Let's go ahead and watch it. And it was probably 2014. What about yourself? When did you see it?
I want to say I saw it. I think I saw it when I was 13, so a good 7, 8 years ago. And it's the exact opposite for me. Like for me, Rob Zombie was the guy who did the Devil's Rejects, and I found out they did music. But with this film, I was so aware of it before I watched it. I had heard all the conversations, all the back and forth about the changes that he made, and I'm pretty sure I'd seen the original by the time I watched this. But I definitely was aware of that film too, obviously. So I was prepared for all the stuff that he did, and that's maybe why on my first viewing I dug the hell out of it. I sort of I sort of put the blinders on for some of the white trash stuff, which is easily my least favorite aspect of this movie. But what's interesting with this is even though I don't think it's a solid film. I think Rob Zombie's Halloween is a rocky journey start to finish. There's stuff like that plagues this movie that's gonna irk any kind of horror fan. But for me, it's one of those films that's just more than the sum of its parts. Yes, like there's really cringy dialogue. Yes, there's some gratuitous violence that does go over the top. But at the end of the day, you have one of like the most like visceral, brutal, atmospheric. I'd say this movie's really underrated in terms of the cinematography and the presence that Rob Zombie gave Michael Myers. So yeah, obviously we're going to talk about what worked and what didn't, but even to this day, I still really enjoy this movie. I would say I love it, but it, that's with a but. I get it. So
Right.
like if you want to scream at me like how he ruined Michael Myers, save it because I've heard it. But for you, let's get into the cons. What do you think of that whole white trash direction they took it?
I think I'm with you as far as like that being a problem. Like for me, growing up in Illinois, I always had a problem with like when they threw rednecks into a Halloween film. Just because growing up, like I know I grew up, in the northwest suburbs, so uh, it's not exactly southern Illinois, but in all my time living there, I never ever experienced somebody with that deep of a southern accent. So even like Halloween 4, which I love to death, I had a problem with that and that too. But
Is there
it's
a
just
redneck
like
character in
yeah, it
Halloween
was
4?
like like the group of characters that were going around and hunting for him,
Oh, those
from the
guys.
bar, from the
Oh,
bar.
yeah. You're
Right.
right. I didn't even pick up on that.
I, it,
All right.
what people from Illinois, I guess,
Yeah,
think
okay.
about
All right.
are
All right.
obsessive fans. But yeah, and they took it. I felt like Rob, that sort of thing works perfectly in his sort of like world that he built with the Devil's Rejects, especially. And I love it in that movie. And like I said before, when you imagine a movie, it's okay to be different about it, and it's okay to do things that are different, take chances. I just felt like when you do something, it has to make sense, and that just didn't really make sense to me. It felt like it was just kind of there just to have his like stamp on it,
Mhm.
and it didn't feel like it had a place with the tone of the rest of the movie. It was probably also my biggest problem, besides the scene in the director's cut. It was probably my biggest problem in the movie as well.
Yeah, and I know exactly what scene you're talking about. I'm sure we'll get to
Yeah.
that. But on the white trash stuff, even though it is really problematic, and I have to warn people like, look, if you're gonna watch this movie, you're gonna have to put up with some really cringy dialogue because the characters in the Devil's Rejects, like they were rednecks, but there was like a musical quality I want to say to that dialogue. Like
Hmm.
it was really well written,
Hmm.
at the end of the day. And with here, you can just tell that he was really trying to bring that energy to Halloween. And a square peg isn't going to fit in a round hole. But at the same time, I don't resist the idea of taking us back to Michael's childhood and giving him an environment like that for his rage to fester. Because something that this movie doesn't get credit for is that there's layers to Michael's psychology. People act like the fact that he was raised in this hick family is the reason he started killing people. But if you watch, like his relationship with his mother plays a really huge role in the decisions that he makes.
Yep.
And that's a really fascinating relationship for me. And honestly, that salvages the kind of first act where it's in the home. I don't know about you, but that when he kills that bully, it's not because the bully was picking on him. It's because that bully was going to, he's going to post all the naked pictures of his mother around school. Like that's a really important detail, and people I don't think really give the movie enough credit to notice stuff like that. If I'm being honest.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that both movies, and of course we're going to get into it when we get to Halloween 2, but I think there's so
Oh
much.
boy, Halloween too.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to get to that one for
That'll be
sure.
fun.
It's definitely like you said. I just think it's overlooked because it's almost like issues that we have in the real world. Sometimes you look at something that's done and you think, oh, that's horrible that they did that, but you don't look at the intention behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that rings true in every Rob Zombie movie. And like you said, there's dialogue in it that makes you just think like, what was he thinking in that? I've never heard anybody say that they want to skull fuck somebody personally. But
Maybe in
when
Rob
you,
Zombie's house. Yeah.
well, yeah, maybe in Rob
Maybe.
Zombie's house growing up, but honestly, it's a big problem. But I do agree with you that showing him as a child and I think to an extent, I've shared my thoughts about this before. Is that I really genuinely think that the movie should have picked up um, right by the killings, and it's kind of
Hmm.
just that's more of like not ignoring the things that happen to him, but I think uh, in that instance, I think you can kind of tell. Once he's in the sanitarium, you kind of see everything coming through, and you understand what happened to him before, even if that wasn't present before. And I just think that would have been a little bit better. But I do agree that seeing that side of him as a child of how he was before, and then what he kind of grew into, that it's sort of like the Frankenstein, like the man made the monster.
Hmm.
And I know he was kind of going for that, and I like that because it's different. The original Halloween gave us purely and simply evil, from the
Yeah.
words of Dr. Loomis, and this one
Black
gave
tie.
us more of like a mix of nature and nurture, which they do bring up in the second movie. But I think it's a good balance. I think it was in his brain already. They just set the course, and I think it was a good way to do it. I think the layers are there, and I think you're totally right.
Yeah, and I also want to say that like after the after the scene with the principal where Loomis comes in, like after that, I actually feel like the movie does stabilize a lot more. Like I, I can think of problems I have, but I don't think there's a scene or a large segment of the movie that puts me off the same way the first couple of scenes do, because then he starts focusing on the horror aspect of the story. And when this movie's being a horror film, I think Rob shot it brilliantly. Like that killing of the bully, like nobody knows how to make a murder like that as like gut wrenching. The Rob did there, and people act like you're supposed to root for Michael, and I just don't see that at all. I know you're supposed to sympathize with him to an extent, but watching this young child like mercilessly and ruthlessly beat another child, that was a really effective way to build that character as not only just a flesh and blood human being, but like a monster.
Yeah, I think he does a lot of that in his films, where you're thinking, and it's almost like the Devil's Rejects kind of did it the other way around, where um, by the end of the movie you're like, why am I rooting for these characters? I shouldn't be rooting for these characters. I think it's the other way around or it kind of is that extent in Halloween, in his Halloween films, because you're introduced to these just awful people, and they're obviously, like you said with the bully, and I'll use that example as well. This bully is a bad dude. We don't know why, but he's a bad dude. Maybe he's wired the same way Michael is, just a
Yeah.
different path.
Or maybe
And
Spy Kids really fucked him up.
Spy Kids fucked up Daryl Savannah, but yeah, I really liked how he did that as well. I think to an extent, you're like, yeah, get him, Michael, and then you see at the end where like, now, okay, this guy's begging for his life now. Like, you got to think like this. I mean, this kid's got a family. Is like a little bit of bullying really worth like this? And then by the end of the movie, it's like, I think the perfect one of where you kind of stop being able to justify like I'm rooting for Michael, is when he kills Danny Trejo's character
Sure.
of Ishmael. Because at that point, this is somebody who has been good to Michael, somebody who had a relationship with him for years in the sanitarium, and he even says it when he's killing him. He's like, "I was good to you, Mikey. I was good to you." I think that's the point where, like, even if you were able to defend it before, like, he killed the bully, killed the dad, killed the sister, they were all mean to him. Whatever. If you want to justify that, if that's a justification for murder for you, then sure. But I think that's the point in the movie where it kind of turns, and it's like, okay, nobody else really deserves it from this point on. They just get it, and I, I I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I think I agree with. I don't get the sympathy part either.
Yeah, because what Rob Zombie is doing, and I don't want to dwell too much on this because we have a lot to get to in the
Yep.
second act, but what he's doing is he's showing the psychological journey of Michael Myers. and
Yes.
that happens in steps. So, you can have the John Carpenter version where he snaps one day and all of a sudden, stabs his sister. That's one way to tell that story.
Mhm.
But here it's a process, and you have to like escalate, the evil more. Like evil doesn't come out of a vacuum, at least not in this universe.
Right.
So, his killings start motivated, by feelings that you and I could understand. But as he's taken to the sanitarium, he's like sort of cast aside by society, and he's barred from seeing the only two people he ever loved.
Hmm.
Uh, and that whole sanitarium part. I think like Rob really found his footing with understanding the character's psychology, because that whole section of the movie, aside from the the director's cut scene, as I'll call it, aside from that scene, I think every scene in that movie is like flawless. And now I want to really move into something else. Malcolm McDowell as Dr. Loomis. How do you feel about his portrayal in this first Halloween?
I liked it. I think that it's better that he didn't watch what Donald Pleasance did,
Mm-hmm.
because to me, like I have, besides Michael Myers, because Michael Myers is a great character. I think he's a great killer, but I think you have to look at other characters from a different perspective. And so when I do look at other characters like that in the franchise, Loomis is right up there with Jamie Lloyd for me, is like my favorite character. So to try to see somebody like replicate that would have been awful to me. Luckily, he didn't, and I think he did an awesome job, especially in the first film. I think that when you look at performances from the first movie to the second movie, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them get better, but I think that this first movie really stapled him in place. Like this guy did awesome in this first movie. In my opinion.
Now you have people who really don't like him, who consider him a second-rate version of Donald Pleasance. But again, he wasn't trying to be Donald Pleasance. This is an extremely different interpretation of that character.
Hmm.
Because with Donald Pleasance, he just viewed Michael Myers as this evil force that had to be stopped. It was
Hmm.
a very black and white situation, and Donald Pleasance, pulled that off beautifully. And he's deservedly iconic for it. But what Malcolm McDowell and Rob Zombie did to this character was like, he feels this kinship to Michael. Because think about it, he's been trying to help this kid since he was 10 years old. How much of his life is he devoted to that? So in a way, he kind of like has this fatherly relationship, and he even says at one point in the movie that you're like my best friend. And that to me, that internal conflict that he has, like I know he's dangerous, but but this kid, I put so much of my life in trying to help him, and I failed. Like all of that is done beautifully.
Hmm.
And maybe not my favorite scene, but probably my favorite Loomis scene at least, is when he says, after Michael's grown up, he says, Michael, I've tried, but I can't keep doing this. You haven't spoken a word in 15 years. If there's one thing that I think is really unimpeachable about this first Halloween, I would argue was Malcolm McDowell's Loomis. I really love what he did with that character.
Yeah, I can agree. I think that's what I think he more than anyone else holds down the movie when, problems do arise. I think he's the thing that kind of keeps the movie grounded and keeps it down. And I totally agree. I think he's a staple of this film to show how well it's done.
Yeah, and then of course, what they do with him in Halloween 2, we'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll get there.
But now we've spent a lot of time talking about the first, excuse me, about the first half of this movie. Now we'll get into the second half, which is a different movie, but it's just a different movie from the first half. It's bridged by that sanitarium section, so I don't think it's necessarily bad, but it
Mhm.
really is. It feels like a different movie in a lot of ways. How do you feel about this section of the movie compared to the first half?
Truthfully, I actually enjoy it more. To me, the reason that I enjoy it more is I love the character moments in the beginning with Michael, obviously, but to me, there is a Halloween fan in me always when I'm watching a Halloween film, and I really did want to see moments of Michael being Michael, and honestly, a lot of it for me, and a lot of people had a problem with Scout's character, with Scout's portrayal of Laurie.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I think it added something a little bit different. She wasn't quite as toned down, and she wasn't quite as sort of
Virginal.
yeah
Yeah.
as Jamie Lee Curtis was in the original, and I really liked. Honestly, I think, and I will defend this till the day that I die, no matter what happens. These two movies, in my opinion, as far as acting goes, outside of Malcolm McDowell, I think was absolutely carried by Danielle Harris. I think she did a phenomenal job as
Oh
Annie.
yeah.
I think she is
Yeah.
so, I much respect to Nancy Loomis or Nancy Keys, however she calls these days. But I honestly, to me, Danielle is Annie Brackett, and she's also, obviously she's also Jamie Lloyd.
Hmm.
Um, but when you compare those two, I just think that she did such a phenomenal job and made that second part of the movie a lot more enjoyable for me, along with everything that Michael did. I think great Myers moments, brutal Myers, great portrayal by Tyler Mane, and yeah, I
Oh
actually
man,
liked
yeah.
it better.
Yeah, so I actually do like it better because it really is the more stable part of it. Even though there are moments here and there, like that bagel scene, that's the ultimate what the fuck moment. Like that one, like Rob, like I'm trying, I'm really trying here, but you're not making it easy to defend this film. But aside from moments like that, it is just a phenomenally well done horror movie. The scenes with Michael stalking his prey and then moving in, it's it's obviously paying a lot more tribute to the original than the first half did. Now it really is more of a remake, but there's that zombie flair that makes it fresh. I don't think Rob Zombie was copying and pasting the first movie. It's not at all. He really did bring something else, especially with that really brutal and vicious reinterpretation of Michael. Uh, and real quick, I want to touch on the mask. This is my favorite mask out of the whole franchise. The mask here, okay, I know, I know. I'm not saying the original iconic mask is bad by any means,
Right.
but the scarred look, the way it's decaying, and the way that represents the kind of rotting soul of Michael Myers, that just really spoke to me.
I
Just,
mean, I like it too. It's
mm.
definitely a mask that's up there for me. But if anybody understands controversial opinions on masks, it's this guy. So you're totally good on my
Oh,
end.
because the Halloween 5 mask, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's not bad. That's not. I don't know what this is a tangent. I don't know what people's problem is with the mask there.
Yeah,
Like
I never got it, but
coming off the Halloween 4 mask, I think you could have gotten a Walmart mask and it would have been fine by comparison. But that's just me, I suppose. I just really hit the Halloween 4 mask. It's a good movie. I like it. Just that.
yes.
Oof, okay. But going back to this, I did want to touch on the numerous tributes, the blatant tributes that Rob Zombie paid, and I'll say that these are my least favorite parts of the movie, even more than the breakfast table scene, or even the rape scene in the director's cut, because it's the most throwaway. It's the most recite. Like I didn't need to see Bob getting stabbed again. It doesn't help your version of the story. It's just you paying fan service. So
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind it as much only because I felt like it was enough to, or at least at the time when I was watching it, I felt like it was enough to get Halloween fans to be like, okay, he's not shitting all over it. He cares and he's seen it and all of that. But I thought it was also it was dwindled down to the point where like you can't. It's not like the central focus. Not everything he's doing is a rehash, and so I
oh
thought it
sure.
was done well enough in that way. And I don't know. There are some in some ways that I'm like, okay, well, it's kind of weird that they decided to do that again. Like that's the most iconic, like Bob getting stabbed. Like that's one of the most iconic, visuals from the first
Hmm.
movie. But I think they did, and I think they brought enough originality to it that it was okay. I didn't have a big problem with it at all. I thought it was enough to bring in the fans that were maybe a little bit on the fence.
I can see him really trying to appeal that to that fan base, and it's not like offensive to me. It's not like Gus Van Sant's Psycho, where it's literally a shot for shot thing. Even though people describe it as that, like people say, no, this second half is a shot for shot remake. I'm like, well, what about the entire climax? Like, nothing about the climax except for the fact that Michael's chasing Lori. Like everything from the way it's staged to the emotional context. Like one of my favorite scenes of this movie is when Michael he takes her down to that basement, he unmasks, and he just sits there, and he's trying to make her accept him, and that's when I could tell that Rob Zombie had really nailed down his interpretation of his character, and you know, maybe Zombie made Michael too different, but he did not make him less scary. To people that say that Michael's not scary in this, it's all subjective. But when he crashes through that wall, I mean, that got to me. Well, that was a really pulse pounding moment, And then she falls into the pool, and I could gush about the climax honestly for a while. So
right.
I won't. But do you like what he did with the ending here, that chase through the Myers house?
I really did like the ending. I thought that obviously like the sort of I guess false ending. It does, and you made a point of this too, of saying like, it lures you into the sense of security. And
yeah, because they say the last line of the original film.
And then it keeps going. And I like that they did that, because then it kind of separates itself out, again, given that little wink. And I liked that. And I thought that it was really well done and a good way to end it. And for me, and I know we've talked about this, but like I like when things come full circle. I like when things are very poetic, and the parallels between the final scene and the scene with Deborah Myers, the suicide scene with Deborah Myers. That was just awesome to me. I love that Rob does that stuff sometimes and really shows like, yeah, I'm paying attention to my story. Like, I know you don't think I am, but yeah, I know what I'm doing. And I like that he did that. It was so perfect to me with the scream, and it was like almost exactly like how the baby was screaming. It was just perfect to me. I really liked that. I thought it was one of the better endings of the franchise.
Yes, Rob's out. Like, I almost think he doesn't want. Like, he's kind of like that kid in class who wants to be tough, but secretly he's getting A's on all his homework.
Right. Yeah.
Like he really does pay attention to these characters, and the way the story's told. And I don't think this movie gets enough credit for how full circle Myers' character comes, and the story itself, because when it fades out from her shooting him in the face to the little home video footage of them as children, that chills.
That's it's really, really good. I'm the same way.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's Rob Zombie's Halloween 1. Now we move on to Halloween 2. Halloween 2, one of the most hated, if not just the most hated, horror movies out there. People don't generally say it's worse than Resurrection, but I almost feel like they hate it more just because it really was just a Rob Zombie movie with a Halloween title. And yeah, there's no end of hate for this movie. No end. So why do we like it? Connor, why don't you start on that? Why do you dare call yourself a Halloween 2 fan?
And I will say this, just outwardly, I could literally talk about this movie for probably 24 hours straight. It's not my favorite horror movie of all time. I have flaws with it. I feel like there are flaws in it, excuse me, but I will proudly call myself a fan. I have a t-shirt, and I wore that t-shirt to go and drive myself 2.5 hours to the filming locations in Madison, Covington. I went all over the place just to see those. I think the reason is because, obviously when I first watched this movie, I really did hate it. I watched it with my girlfriend. She hated it too. And she pretty much had to talk me out of breaking it. I wanted to break the disc. I was like, I don't need it in my collection. I don't want it in my collection. Get it away from me. But there was always one thing that I realized was good in the movie, and I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit. But it was, the the characters and the trauma that they felt from the event of the first movie. This really affected them. And so as a writer, I like to watch this stuff and study it. And when I went back and watched it again, I was like, you know what, this movie isn't that bad. And then I watched it for a third time, and it really was like, it became in my top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. Immediately shot up to number 3 in my Halloween ranking. And that's bold to say. And I proudly call myself, Halloween is my favorite franchise. I put my hand on my heart. This movie is number 3 for me currently on my list. I love it. And what attracts you towards this movie?
It's funny because I, have the opposite reaction because I loved it when I first saw it. I fell head over heels in this movie, just from that that first scene with the mother in the sanitarium with the new Michael, as I'll call him. That was a bumpy way to start. But when you see Laurie walking down the street, and then Sheriff Brackett comes to her and she says, "I killed him." Like, from that moment, I was hooked. I was just into the movie. I did pick up on flaws, which we'll get into, but nothing really bothered me, except the ending of the director's cut. That got to me a little bit. But from the visual style to the characterization to the way he handled Myers, I have no end of praise for what he did with Halloween 2. Now, but first, I think we should address the horse in the room, the white horse in the room. that was terrible.
That was a good one. I liked it.
Okay, all right. What do you think of the white horse stuff, as we'll call it?
I'm gonna try to be as non-confrontational about this as possible when I say this, but I think it's total horseshit. Really, I think. Not that it's horseshit that it's in the movie. I think it's horseshit that it's a criticism, personally. Look, ultimately, when you watch the movie, horse has about, if you counted it out, you would count 2 minutes or less on screen.
I think less.
Probably less. I'm overestimating in case I might be wrong. It's always safe to overestimate than underestimate, but
that's true.
To me, like, it's such an irrelevant part of the movie that's just there to tie them together that I don't get why anybody would be so mad about it. And what's so funny is, like, it didn't even go through Rob's head that, like, this is a central focus of the movie. If you listen to the DVD commentary, he really just says, like, yeah, we were on the way to a location. I saw this white horse and I was like, oh my God. He was so enthralled by it that he found that imagery and he put it in the movie. And it really, I think it just added to the angelic nature that Michael saw of his mother, which is another criticism that I don't get. But I think it just added to that. And it was a small thing that connected him and Laurie and their mindsets and how, the course they were going. And I didn't mind it at all, honestly.
Yeah, now, if we're talking about literally the image of the white horse, I do think it's a little clumsy. And you can tell because not only is there, like, an opening text to explain it, but there's a whole opening scene to explain it. So that's a red flag that it doesn't fit as well. But if by the white horse stuff you mean just the visions that he has, I think that is fucking excellent. The way he explores Myers' psychology and the level of creativity he put into that, like, it's, I don't know, like, that's a case of people just wanting different things from this franchise. So if you think, him having visions of his mother is the equivalent of Busta Rhymes kicking him in the face, then, that's your prerogative.
Sorry, Tony Crespo. Sorry, Tony.
But that's one of those things that really cements this movie's place in my heart, because Rob really took a chance to explore and dive into this character's psychology more than in the first movie, because this one was literally going in his head. And not only is it, a great way to flesh out his character, but it's haunting imagery. It chills me to watch. Now, and that leads to one of I think the big things about this movie, the converging paths of Michael and Laurie. What do you think about the way Rob handled the duality of those two characters?
I really, really liked it because it really reminded me of Another movie that's we've already brought up in this that I love very much is Halloween 5, and they have that connection with Jamie Lloyd. He has that similar connection where the visions are kind of going back and forth, and you know, it's almost like he's trying to get her to become him. And but in this one, it takes another aspect because not only are they coming together, you know, their worlds are coming together, and by the end of it, it has, but it's also bringing the family aspect to it, and it gives Michael more of a purpose, and giving him a purpose in a movie like this, and I catch a lot of flack for this, but it does a lot more for the first movie, like the movie before it, than
Mm-hmm.
Halloween 2, the original, did for the original. It doesn't add a lot to, you know, Halloween 2 is a great movie. Halloween 2 from 1981 is a fantastic
Mm-hmm.
movie. I love it. Personally, I, I praise it very highly, but to me,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't build on what the first one did enough. It just feels like it tried to capitalize on what happened in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
This one took the story and advanced it, and it pushed it forward. And I think adding that narrative of I just want my family back together, I think it was genius, and it was done very well.
From Rob Zombie's version of that character, it was genius. People, it's a sequel to his remake, so I don't know why people are saying no. This is Michael Myers. He should be like, and that like this is a continuation of a different timeline. So obviously, people are just they want certain things, and I can't
Right.
blame them. If I see a Spider-Man movie, I'm gonna want certain things, and you can
Exactly.
make a different interpretation of that character that's good, but it's gonna rub me the wrong way. But the
Right.
difference is, I don't point and say you ruined Spider-Man. You know,
Yeah, you got
yeah,
a point.
you got to point. You ruined that character. Rob Zombie, everything was going fine in this franchise until you ruined everything. God damn it. No, but this the again, low key, Rob is really delving into the psychology of his characters. In the original Halloween 2, Laurie Strode is lying in a bed for 80% of the movie,
Hmm.
and she has like four lines. In this one, the, the way he examines how this trauma affected her, first off, it's just realistic. Anybody who goes through that event, like, they're going to carry scars that really could
Hmm.
hinder their ability to conduct themselves. But the added angle of the fact that they're brother and sister, that implies a genetic instability that this trauma sort of brought out in her, which that's there's so many layers to what's going on in the characters of this movie. And I'm a character guy. Like, if you ask me what the most important aspect of a movie is, like, characters would probably be the thing I would say the most. And that's
Me
just,
too.
yeah. Now, but that's not even my favorite thing about this movie. Honestly, my favorite thing is just the way it looks, just the atmosphere, the lighting, the way he shot. I thought he shot the horror, elements of the first one brilliantly. He topped himself here. That hospital scene. I know it's a dream, but honestly, who can look at that and not, realize what talent he has as a director, at least?
And can I say also, I just wanted to add in, I think the whole movie has a great job of building this atmosphere of like, it's a perfect blend of supernatural feeling
Yeah.
and a slasher feeling, and
Mm-hmm.
nothing complements that better than these beautiful visuals that they have mixed with that. And this does not get enough credit. And I've talked to critics of this movie and showed and told them to go listen to it. The soundtrack, the score to this movie
Tyler
is
Bates score, yeah.
amazing. It is incredible. I talked about my trip to the filming locations. I listened to it the whole way. I did not get bored of it. There are two tracks in particular that are just amazing on it, and I think if even if you're a critic, I think you should go on to iTunes, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
YouTube, listen to the full soundtrack of this movie, and tell me it's not super well done. And it complements the visuals of this movie perfectly, especially that bell tolling that they put
Mm-hmm.
in there. Incredible. It chills. I'm getting chills thinking about it.
Yeah, there's this one simple thing he does where I don't know how to describe it. It's like a dun, like every time like one of the visions appears, it's a dun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like that
Yeah,
bell sound. Yeah.
yeah, it's like it, but it's so ethereal. It's so it has so much ambiance to it.
Hmm.
Again, I no end to the praise I can shout on this movie. Now, I do acknowledge the flaws. Let's get into them. Namely, one really, the direction they took Loomis. for someone who loved so much what Malcolm McDowell brought to that first movie, honestly, I think this is the one spot where Rob Zombie was kind of sticking it to the fans. Like I think he was thinking, oh, if you thought that, you thought the first movie was different, I'll show you different, you know.
I think it's possible. I brought this up in my 10 points of redemption video for this movie. I hear that criticism a lot, and when I first watched it, it really made me mad. Like that was one of my biggest issues with it. It topped the list because I totally agree. I felt like they wasted it. But when you look at the rest of the characters and you break down how they are now, when you look at Scout as Lori and how she is now, she is pretty much the exact opposite as the person that she was before. Even though she was modernized in the first movie, she was still that basically like the good girl, you know?
Yeah.
And in this movie, she completely changes who she is because she doesn't want to be the same person that stuff happened to. Same thing with Annie and Danielle Harris, which, might I say, Rob Zombie's finest scene in any movie, in my opinion, is her death scene in this movie. That is my favorite scene of his. It's the only scene in any movie that I've seen recently that has actually made a tear come out of this president's eyes. Is that movie, and I'll tell you, or is that scene. And when I watch this movie, and I know it's coming every time, especially the director's cut now, and they actually took this out in the theatrical, which is the little home videos that they showed of like Danielle Harris as a child. It just adds to it. And Sheriff Brackett finding her, but look at all the characters. They're either complete opposites of themselves. Annie, Lori, an extension of themselves, like a more scared version of themselves, like Sheriff Brackett. And then you look at Dr. Loomis, and Dr. Loomis is just like Lori. He knew what he was before. He was the caretaker. He wanted to make sure nobody got hurt. And what happened? Everybody got hurt. He almost died. All these people got affected only because he wanted to be a caring person, and he was caring for Michael, and he had these feelings for Michael. So what do you do now? You cut all those feelings out. You don't have feelings for anyone anymore. You're strong. You're yourself. You're a different Loomis. And I love the scene that really cemented it for me of like, this isn't as bad as I thought it was seeing the picture when he's about to go into the convention. He goes, that's the old Loomis. And he's so infuriated about it. I think that makes it a little bit more tolerable. I still don't fully agree with it, but when you look at the other characters and how they were affected and how they all just wanted to be different from themselves or a better version of themselves, I think it works a lot better when you think of it in that context. When you watch a movie that maybe you didn't like that before, I think it's a little bit more tolerable when you think that way.
Sure. And I do agree, actually, that the decision to make him the opposite of himself, I mean, that fits right in the movie's themes. There's a version of that story that I think is as brilliant as the rest of the stuff in this movie. The weird thing for me, and the thing that really put me off, was the way he played it up for comedy. Like, Loomis being a bitter man who rejects, who he used to be, because look where that got him, and him exploiting it for profit, the murders, that's something that could be really compelling. And there are moments when that kind of shines through, but him, like, complaining about the temperature of his tea, and him going on the Chris Hardwick show and arguing with Weird Al.
I'll admit that that's probably the biggest issue that stands. And if they would have taken that stuff out, I think people would have had a less problem with it. I think it was almost like the, and again, sorry, Tony, but it's almost like the resurrection effect, where like you make a character a joke so much that you just stop really caring. And I think that putting that scene in with Weird Al is where a lot of fans, it happened to them there. It didn't happen with me. Him coming, to his own in the end and basically doing what's right. That completely nullified it for me. But I get where people are coming from when they say, oh, they put Weird Al in the movie, they made Loomis seem like a joke, so why do we care? I get that, and I do think that it was a little bit of Rob sticking it to the fans. I think you're definitely right on that.
Yeah, well, he likes to stick it. He likes to break rules. He finds a lot of excitement as a filmmaker and as an artist in general in going against the norm, breaking convention. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really inspiring when he does something like The Devil's Rejects. But when you're handling a franchise film and you're making some decisions out of spite, now I don't want to go assuming that's exactly what he did.
Yeah.
but you can't help but get that feeling if you're a fan, if you're someone
Yeah.
who yeah, followed franchise. But that's the only real issue I have with this film because otherwise, I'm gonna say it right here now. This is my favorite Halloween film. Now,
I applaud you, sir.
yeah,
I do.
I I have to say I respect and I admire the original. There's like the original John Carpenter version. As a person who loves horror films, I am indebted to what he did there. But for think of what I like personally. This movie just appealed to me more. Now I'm not going to call it the better movie. I'm not going to do that thing where like some people like I'm not going to name names, but
Right.
say no, this is the better movie. You're all just
Yeah.
blinded by nostalgia. I got that comment on my Halloween 2018 review. Yeah, somebody said this is the better Halloween movie, but nostalgia is a powerful emotion. Like you be you, dude. But no, these movies have a really special place in my heart, and even though they're held back by a lot of issues, and I think Rob honestly was pretty uncomfortable with handling such a big franchise and the responsibilities that came with it. He did what he did best. He
Mm.
made it his. He ran with it. He really honed his craft in terms of building psychology for his characters and building atmosphere and tension. So these films are always going to have haters. I'm never going to be one of them.
I totally agree. I think, while a lot of people have Loomis as their biggest problem with the movie, to me, and I hate saying this because as a person, I really like Sherry, and as
Oh
a
yeah.
actress, I really like Sherry. But I just think her place in this movie was justified. People say, "Oh, he just wanted to throw her in the movie." Maybe, but it made sense and it carried the story along well. But I just think this movie, more than any, like when people say, "Oh, Sherry's a bad actress," and they point to this, I can't really say no. And maybe it's because everybody else is so strong. And that's another thing I don't get is they say the acting is so bad in this movie. Like I said before, I've talked to many people who even hate this movie, and they agree. Like, you know, there are certain performances that are very good. Some people find Scout annoying, but I think that her and the three that are living in the house together in this movie. So Sheriff Brackett, Annie, and Lori, they carried this movie, and it like you said, you're a character person. Me too, and I think that they kind of exemplified how good the characters were in this movie, and really just the acting from Sherry and young Michael were my biggest problem. But like you said, special place in my heart. One of I think at least like slasher wise, any of the year from 2000 till right now, or at least I think from even in the 90s, I think this is probably the best out of all the slasher movies, and it's one of my favorite horror films of all time. I love it dearly, just like you do. And yeah, it holds a special place in my heart, more so than the first one. Um, Especially because I like the first one, but I have more I have more issues with it than I do with this one. But I'm totally with you. Very special place in my heart for that one.
Yeah, well, the first one is trying to be a Rob Zombie film and a Halloween film. This
Yeah,
one is just a Rob Zombie film.
yeah, and I think I think when he focuses on something, and he really wants to go after that certain atmosphere or effect, I think he does it perfectly, and no movie exemplifies that better than this and The Devil's Rejects, but mostly Halloween 2 to me.
Yeah, well, this was a really exciting discussion for me. I've been
Likewise.
waiting. I've been waiting to get this off my chest for a while. I've been putting it off, like
Right.
really putting these two movies off because the internet is not going to like this video very much.
No, no,
It's
no,
no,
no.
no. Yeah, I mean, I thought I got trolls before. No, no.
They're coming.
They're coming, but you know what? There are some movies you love so much you would take a bullet for,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm gonna do if I have to. I'm gonna take a bullet for Rob Zombie's Halloween's, and I'm glad you joined me here today to kind of take that bullet. Honestly, I don't. I guess it's more controversial to say that you like Halloween too, even though it's yeah, because there is a fan base for his first movie, but well, we'll see how people react to this. But this was a really great discussion. I'm glad you could partake in it. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm really honored to be a part of the channel and to for your audience to see me. And I love that I was here. Thank you for having me, and thanks for having this discussion with me as well. I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, anybody who hasn't seen seeing Connor's channel. What are you doing? Go check it out right now. Check out his top 10 redemption.
Yeah, 10 Points of Redemption is the
10 points
series
of
name.
10 points of redemption of his Halloween 2. One of the first people I've ever met who had the guts to go out and defend that movie, even before I did. And that's why he's here tonight. So thank you again, sir. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed it. Even if you hate these movies, please understand that we're just coming from a place of just genuine affection. I don't want to agitate anybody or piss them off. This is just my honest feelings, and it would be a disservice to everybody if I like lied about it, just because that would be the popular thing to do.
Totally right. I'm with you. That's why I'm here.
Yeah. All right. So again, to everybody, go check out Connor's channel, like if you want, subscribe if you want, and see you again in the future. And that's